One tension now is withdrawn from the worldly realities, and now is completely oriented to that which can never be an object and which can never be grasped by the mind. You see how to proceed. Because try as you may, but you cannot understand the truth. You cannot conceive it. You can only imagine it with the mind, intellectually. You see the difference between ultimate knowledge, that means aparoksha jnana, direct knowledge, that is with no mind. Amanibhava, no mind. And Brahmagyan abhyas, the practice abhyas of the knowledge of Brahman. That means all the teachings, the ultimate teachings about truth and about ourselves. It's even beyond the Brahma Vidya. It's more like the philosophy, Brahmagyan. So, you see, as long as there is a practice, it's not the direct knowledge. Direct knowledge is the end of all practices. So, as I mentioned before, we will speak about Vedantic meditation. So, and because there has been some confusion in the literature, and definitely it is clearly mentioned in the scriptures, and also it is mentioned in the teachings of the great philosophers of Advaita Vedanta. Right away from the first philosopher, that is Sri Gaudapada Acharya of the 6th century, and then in the commentaries of Sri Adi Shankaracharya. So, what is Vedantic meditation? The main word that we use, the main concept, is called Nididhyasana. But there are synonyms. I'm not sure if there is an essential difference between these synonyms, like Nirgun Brahman Upasana, that is mentioned in Panchadasi. Upasana implies a duality in the meditation. There is the meditator and the object of meditation. But here you see the object of meditation is the infinite. It can never be an object. It's moreover, it's the subject. It is that which is shining in you. So, you see how complicated it is to meditate on the infinite. So, Nididhyasana is about contemplating our true nature, the self, or Brahman, which are the same, one and the same. And make that contemplation uninterrupted. And it invariably starts with the inner mental repetition of a mantra, a Vedantic mantra, of course, which is a pointer to our true essence. It can be a mantra, it can be only a word or a feeling. And of course, this will depend on your preference, what speaks to you most. So that particular word or thought, because eventually it is a thought, it's a vritti, is of course a symbol, it's a temporary means, a skillful means, because we have to go beyond the thought process. You see, we use the thought to go beyond the entire thought process, to come to that ultimate stillness, shanta. So we use an object of concentration because the beginner cannot contemplate the infinite unless she has a form, an imagined form in the mind to direct the attention. We have been so much habituated to focus our attention on objects. So how to bring the attention to that which is beyond all objects? It transcends the whole phenomenality. It is limitless. It is transcendental. So it will be an impossible task. So here we have to go by stages. And the first stage is to use a concept, a thought. As I said, a vritti, because eventually it's a modification in the mind. It belongs to mind only. It's also an imagination. So it's the vritti of Brahman, Brahma vritti. And this process is called Brahmakara vritti, because akara means form, the thought, the vritti of the form of Brahman. But Brahman ultimately is formless, you see. So it's only a technique. So by repeating internally this mantra, this word, this thought, this feeling, because the feeling is a vritti, you will create a flow, a continuous flow of attention. So much so that you won't have to repeat anymore. So this works like a normal mantra, you see, like in the Bhakti tradition. Because after some time, the mantra is repeated. It's repeating itself. You hear the mantra, you can listen to the mantra. You don't have to do an effort for that. So we start with an effort. We end up in complete effortlessness. So you have to create that flow, the flow towards Brahman. So you see, this vritti is very special. Because what is the role of this vritti? It is to remove all other vrittis in your mind. And see for yourself that all other vrittis are related to these worldly realities. Or they are related to your own equipment, to the individual being. So all these vrittis bring you back to your identity, your identification. Now we have here a vritti whose purpose is to liberate you from this identification, to go beyond this thought process. And it is possible. It is possible. Because this vritti, as I said, has to be contemplated to the exclusion of all other vrittis. So when this flow is generated in you, and for that you need uninterrupted, unbroken practice, akant abhyas, unbroken practice, then you create a new vasana. And that is the vasana of Brahman, Brahma vasana. You see? So this Brahma vasana will remove that feeling of being the individual being. Now you have this feeling of an oceanic feeling, you see, an expansion. You can't think yourself anymore as the individual being. You go beyond that jiva bhavana. jiva bhavana, that feeling of being the jiva, the individual being, an entity, a separate entity. You see the importance of this, the Brahma vritti, generating Brahma vasana. Vasana means desire. It's a pattern, it's a deep pattern that is lodged in your subconscious and unconscious mind. And it's so important because all these vasanas which remain ever unseen, you can see only the tip of the nose, that means thoughts, feelings, emotions, but you don't see the root. The roots are hidden. And we need to cleanse these vasanas of identification, which maintain you whether you want it or not. You see, in that individual identity. You see, this is the major task of any sadhana in any path. It is the cleansing of the subconscious mind. It takes time. So that the mind will be purified. Chitta shuddhi. Pure mind. It's so important. So Ramana Maharshi emphasized that all the time. The destruction of the vasanas, the binding vasanas. We are not speaking here about functional vasanas, because we have all kinds of vasanas. We speak about a category of vasana, those who maintain us in the identification. That is the heavy conditioning. And we don't need them to operate, to navigate in the world. We don't need them. It creates only suffering. So vasana kshaya, the destruction of the vasana, destruction of vasana kshaya, which is synonym to manonasha, destruction of mind, because mind is made of these vasanas. So you see, we have a real paradox here, because our intention now is withdrawn from the worldly realities, and now is completely oriented to that which can never be an object and which can never be grasped by the mind. You see how to proceed. Because try as you may, but you cannot understand the truth. You cannot conceive it. You can only imagine it with the mind, intellectually. You see the difference between ultimate knowledge, that means aparoksha jnana, direct knowledge, that is with no mind. Amani bhava, no mind. And Brahmagyan abhyas, the practice abhyas of the knowledge of Brahman. That means all the teachings, the ultimate teachings about truth and about ourselves. It's even beyond the Brahma Vidya. It's more like the philosophy. Brahmagyan. So, you see, as long as there is a practice, it's not the direct knowledge. Direct knowledge is the end of all practices. So, Brahmagyan abhyas will take you to the Brahma aparoksha jnana, the direct knowledge of Brahman. We need to make all these subtle distinctions to understand each other, because so many commentators have diversely interpreted the scriptures. So this vritti is actually your last vritti. It's the ultimate vritti. It takes you to the threshold of direct knowledge, awakening. And then when awakening happens, that vritti is also dissolving. We call it antyavritti, means ultimate, the last one. Because we have to, in this process, exclude all other vrittis related to world and individual self. Yeah? So you see this constant contemplation, constant remembrance. It's not about sitting, we mentioned that yesterday. Huh? It's not sitting all the time or living in a secluded place. Huh? It has to be remembered and contemplated all the time. It's a feeling inside. Don't entertain the feeling of your individuality, your personal life. Entertain a new feeling, the feeling of Brahman, the feeling of the wholeness, that infinite reality, dimensionless. So the antyavritti will also disappear, because at the end you are thoughtless. When all is realized, there won't be any thoughts, only practical thoughts. Practical thoughts. Because thoughts are always related to your desires and your fears, due to your identification, due to the duality that you have created. You have separated yourself from the ocean. You have become the wave. Due to this contraction, then you have this whole traffic of thoughts in the mind. They come from your deeper conditioning. So we use a thought to finish this compulsive thought process. Now, Gaudapada, in his commentaries on Mandukya Upanishad, it's called the Mandukya Upanishad Karika. It's a major text because he's the first philosopher as such of the Advaita Vedanta school, which came with him in the 6th century. And whereas the foundational scriptures go back to the first Upanishads, that means almost 3,000 years ago. And so he said like he has some advice for this practice. He calls it Atma Anusandana. Atma Anusandana. That means constant contemplation of the self. You see, there are several synonyms. They mean the same. He says we need to contemplate and reflect deeply on suffering and see that all worldly realities lead to misery. Why he says like that? Because we need to cultivate dispassion. Unless you have this dispassion in you, vairagya, you cannot walk this path. You cannot finish your vasanas. You are still interested in something in the world. So you need to reflect more and more on this universal misery. And he says, we need to overcome fear. Bhaya. Fear is bhaya. Why? Because it will definitely be generated in you. And what is the fear? This fear is the mother of all fears. And that is the fear of disappearing. The fear of the dissolution of the individual entity that you believe you are. Because in this process, you literally disappear. You can't find you anymore. So this fear, of course, can be overcome through right understanding. You see, this understanding is so important. And this is the preliminary state in Advaita. Understand what you are so that you can come to the direct knowledge. But first you need right understanding. So the teachings are there for that. To know what you are really, that you are not this body-mind. So once you have that inner conviction, intense conviction, beyond doubt, then you won't have this automatic fear. You will be able to let go and to surrender to this process of disappearing. So Bhaya definitely is a major obstacle on this path, because you go into infinity. It's really, it creates anxiety in you, definitely. Other problems are like vikshepa. Vikshepa means the distraction. That means the uninvited thoughts. Your attention is all the time caught up in worldly realities. So where these distractions come from? Again, they come from the inner conditioning that you are not aware of. It is that inner conditioning at the level of subconscious and unconscious mind that is actually moving the individual being towards habitual patterns of mind. You repeat again and again, life after life, the same mental patterns, the same schemes. You cannot get out of these patterns. They are inbuilt, so to say. So this is the root cause of these continuous distractions, vikshepa. It's also an important obstacle. And yes, Gaudapada mentions kashaya. And kashaya means these latent desires of passion, because they can come up suddenly when you think that, okay, now you are passionless. You are in that state of dispassion, vairagya, and suddenly they pop up, you see. So, therefore, we need a quality here that is mentioned by also Shankaracharya, to be established in that sameness, shamya, sameness. See everything as same, no likes and dislikes. It's the same like equanimity. And you need to be steady in your alertness, your vigilance, your vivek, discernment, which is also most important. So that is called the nischala sthiti, to be established, that state of establishment in that motionlessness, steadiness, nischala, that which doesn't move. Nischala is so important. But there is also a subtle danger, and the subtle danger is the inner enjoyment, because definitely you will go into some deep states of the mind. It can also turn into an absorption, and it's not needed, of course, but when it comes by itself, and it will leave an enormous impact on you, a positive impact. But the risk is to habituate ourselves to this inner enjoyment, the blissful experience. That bliss is not the ultimate bliss. It is the bliss that comes with the higher states of the mind. Anandamaya kosha is the subtlest of all the koshas. It's not the Param Anand. If you're in the Param Anand, there's no chance for any form of clinging. So, so that bliss is definitely a danger, because then we tend to go back again and again, to revert to these blissful experiences. Like those who can meditate well and go immediately, almost immediately in the meditative state, they just love it. They won't miss it. You see, it's like appointment with happiness, pure happiness, morning and evening. And so it is fine, but don't stop there. So you should see it more as an incentive, because the real meditation should be unbroken. You have to put yourself in that natural, effortless meditation. That is the real Vedantic meditation. To be established in your naturalness. Not temporary, limited states where you put your mind in the higher level and you enjoy. You see here, this inner enjoyment is as much dangerous than the outer enjoyment. So you find the same actually in every part. Like, don't be attached to visions and blissful experiences that will come to you, and don't be proud also of them, because then you create yourself the obstacle. So then to summarize, you see, we have to make a distinction between ultimate direct gyan, knowledge, and the practice of knowledge. So the practice of knowledge comes after two steps that we call Shravan and Manan. Shravan is like the rapt attention to the teachings, because you need to hear or read the teachings on truth. Someone has to tell you. Unless it was done in a previous birth, and you come already in this life with a full conviction, and you had already an opening, and a new opening will happen soon in this very life. So it's not that you have to hear it from someone. It is already there deep in you. But otherwise, you need to hear it. So it has to be transmitted to you. That is the sense, the meaning of Upadesh. It has to be transmitted to you by someone. We call that one the Guru, because that is the Guru Tattva. That is the same consciousness that is playing the role of a teacher and a guide, transmitting the truth to the one who takes himself or herself for a disciple. But there's no guru and no disciple. It's only one consciousness. So that is that divine play taking place in this manifestation. So Shravan, the hearing, with complete attention, and then Manan, that means the deep reflection on it. Because you need to come to a deep, deep understanding and conviction. Then only you can come to the stage of contemplation. First, you have to be fully convinced for yourself that this is it. You have no intellectual doubt. Then you have to practice it. But you see, that's we call Gyan Abhyas, Brahma Gyan Abhyas, the practice of the knowledge of Brahman. But that is not the ultimate. It's like it comes to the threshold. So between Brahma Gyan Abhyas and Brahma Aparoksha Gyan, there is a shift. And nobody can predict when it will happen or where it will happen. It can happen anytime, any place. On the platform, in the railway station, on the subway. It can happen during satsang. It can happen when you walk along the Ganges. It can happen when you wake up in the morning, or when you go to sleep, then you won't sleep. Because you will be in such a state of bliss that you won't feel asleep at all. So there's a shift, and this shift, of course, you cannot produce it. So that is also pure grace. So definitely, this awakening is always a form, a manifestation, expression of grace. It is grace. You can only prepare yourself. So we have to understand that a first opening is not final realization due to the presence of these hidden vasanas. So the journey starts, the journey begins when you have this first opening, because it is revealed to you. And so now we need to remain steady, as I mentioned, in our viveka, in our discernment, about possible fluctuation in the mind, even the subtlest. Be very careful, because your inner vasanas can take any shape, even some spiritual forms, you see, in the mind, like a elevated thought. So, because if you indulge in these fluctuations in the mind, accept the functional thoughts, definitely you go back in double speed into the identification, the previous identification. It's like that awakening state is withdrawn from you. So that is why awakening is always the beginning of the journey. Then we go from awakening to awakening, unless we can maintain ourselves in that awakening. You see that steadiness is so important prior to the awakening. To be established in the practice of Gyan. That means it should be an unbroken process, a flow. And the moment you forget it, then you should go back to it. So that now you create, as I said, a new habit and a new vasana, the vasana of Brahman. So this vasana of Brahman will purify the mind deeply. Because while you are absorbed in that vasana, you don't entertain any form, any expression of the other vasanas, the bandha vasanas. So they tend to subside, you see, to dissolve. It's a slow process. Because, you see, we can't see them directly. We depend on their manifestation in the mind, in awareness. So they can wait years even before manifesting. They are latent. So this is always the danger. The latent thoughts, feelings coming from the vasanas. So steadiness. Steadiness in this unbroken practice, which starts with effort and then turns into effortlessness, because you know that you are not the one who is going to be enlightened. You are no one. And so you give up your personal identity in this process. And then steadiness in the vivek before and also after awakening. And never go back in whatever form to your previous habits and passions. Because you may reactivate the vasanas, the dormant vasanas. So, you see, there is a sadhana prior to awakening. That's the most important one. But then you have also an essential sadhana post-awakening. The sadhana that takes you from awakening to realization. That is, can be defined as a permanent awakened state. When there is no chance that any vasanas pops up, that means all vasanas have been dissolved. That is that state of manonasha. And then you have come to that complete realization. That means you are in the Brahmanishta or Atmanishta. You are established, not in the practice of Brahman, but in Brahman itself. So that means that is a non-dual state. It's not you are not you in Brahman. There is only Brahman. So a Brahmavit, that means the one who knows Brahman is a Brahmanist, like is established or she established in Brahman. It is the same. Or a Jnani, or a Jivan Mukt. Because you can say that you are free. That's one way to look at it, because that freedom was ever there, you see. You are the Nitya Mukta. So it's not that you become free. You realize your eternal freedom, the total absence of bondage.